The lessons from DeepSeek founder Lian Wenfeng's interview are pretty obvious when you dive into the details of how they were able to beat OpenAI and also beat many American technology firms. Is there's a cultural issue in America that's been exposed. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into these driving factors here, these strategic forces, and what's actually happening in the world of OpenAI, and also what's happening in the world of software development in the United States. So first up, we have open source innovation has the ability to disrupt markets by democratizing access. In this article, DeepSeek was able to open source its model and slash API costs by 1/30th of OpenAI. So this is triggering a price war, and even regional players like ByteDance and Ali Cloud also had to follow. And so what he's saying though is that we need to focus on affordability and accessibility, and these are critical for societal impact. So if you think about that type of terminology, it's very similar in many ways to Amazon when it first launched around 2003, 2004, is that there's this goal of being frugal and actually building things in a day one kind of mentality. So if you see that, you can see the same kind of culture that you're hearing with the American innovators. Now, if we look at point two is original innovation, not imitation. And this is a very bold strategy that I think is quite impressive, is that China's historical reliance on Western tech created a gap in originality. And this is such a deep point here. And what he's saying is, in order for us to lead in the future, we have to prioritize foundational research over quick commercialization. And I would say in the United States, we actually are focused overly now on quick commercialization, and this creates an opportunity globally. If the goal is artificial general intelligence, he's saying that we need to explore new model structures. Imitation is going to make someone a follower, and so he wants to lead by creating new ideas, new designs, and also DeepSeek has a MLA architecture, which is an alternative to the transformer model. And this is a good example of a pioneering breakthrough versus just replicating. Also, another point in point three, the founder of DeepSeek mentions foundational research demands a long-term commitment, not just quick profits. And this is really exposing as well with the United States some of the problems with big tech, also some of the problems with income inequality, and also the venture capital system is it really is focused on these quick profits and these quick wins and a very transactional nature versus long-term research. And it creates an opening for competitors globally, China, Europe, etc., to outcompete the United States. And he says that innovation requires curiosity, creative ambition, not just profit motives. And he contrasts the DeepSeek's focus by not having to be focused to existing revenue streams. So this is, in a way, a typical problem that has been noted in business schools. The Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen, where he talks about how because you're successful, it creates an opportunity for others because you're locked into some strategy that they don't have to follow. And he says that these big breakthroughs require patience and also risk taking. Next up, we have specialization is greater than diversification. So he doesn't want to get into app development. He's focused on core model research, and he thinks that the specialization enables them to build the highest quality model. So this is also classic business school theory, is that there is the problem with doing too many things at the same time. Instead, you want to use your comparative advantage. And this is also going to mirror NVIDIA's GPU dominance. And then in terms of talent and culture, driving innovation more than capital, I can't agree with this more. I think this is really probably one of the foundational problems in the United States is that we're focused on capital, begging for money from Bay Area VCs. But with DeepSeek, they have a flat hierarchy, resource freedom, and passion, and it's going to drive and cultivate breakthroughs. And so he's saying our real moat is that it's our team, and our team is motivated and hungry and we want to learn and foster an innovative culture. And this young domestic talent is going to build these V2 and V3 and V4. And it's not just the budget, it's actually who you have. And so this is a real problem in America because we're asking people to beg, right, for capital and beg for healthcare and beg for income. And people are really struggling. Instead, it's potentially not as possible in the United States to build a company in your garage. So this really shows how this open regional ecosystem could create an actual existential threat to Silicon Valley. So now let's go ahead and dive into the United States here and talk about that and some of the current problems and why potentially there's an entrenched issue with the United States. So first up, we have open source innovation versus regulatory entrepreneurship. In the US, the weakness is that big tech is focused on regulatory capture. So they lobby Congress for AI safety rules that favor the incumbents, and they want to stifle competition and create closed ecosystems. If you look at Microsoft, classic monopolist, they try to do this with Linux. Linux is a superior solution. Windows is an inferior solution. So instead of actually competing and building a better solution, they're actually trying to legislate their way to success. We also see this with a lot of the Bay Area VCs, is that they find something where there's a weak spot. This is the regulatory entrepreneurship. For example, the taxi system, there were legitimate problems with quality, legitimate problems with bureaucracy. But what they do is they illegally compete, right? They create a illegal taxi system that doesn't have to use the taxi medallions. And then they come in and then they change the laws. And then now they actually have a worse product that's more expensive as a result. So how long can you get away with this before you create a systemic risk for the entire nation? Also, the compliance costs and legal battles, antitrust suits, etc. They're from Google and Meta. They're distracting from R&D, and also this really lack of leadership, lack of authentic, ethical leadership in the United States is actually really creating an opening for other regions to enter. So the opportunity for DeepSeek, also the opportunity for Europe, is that you can focus on open sourcing. And in the case of DeepSeek, they're going to bypass the regulatory gatekeeping because they've open sourced the model and it democratizes things globally. So you can see that that's the strategy that Linux used, and it completely crushed Windows, and in fact 90% market share or greater for global infrastructure runs Linux. Likewise, there's essentially, out of the top 25 languages in the United States, software languages, there's only 2 that are closed source, and they're basically niche players. The most successful languages are open source. So U.S. firms are focused on kind of these quick wins, regulatory dominance, and eventually this problem where the U.S. government and also the tech companies and startups essentially capturing everything has created an opening so that the entire world can now outcompete the United States. So the U.S. is spending political capital on shaping the rules, but DeepSeek or other open source competitors are going to spend the capital on reshaping the markets. Now, we also look at original innovation versus big tech monopoly. So in the U.S., really everyone knows that the money is in getting a job at a big tech because they're a monopoly. We have Google, Meta, Microsoft, and they prioritize incremental updates. They have product managers pushing features people don't want. They're protecting the cash cows. I mean, a great example is Office 365 is widely known to be just a terrible product. Nobody wants these features that are being pushed. You can get essentially the exact same product for free through Linux, through LibreOffice. And why would I need a subscription when I have a text editor that already does everything that these other companies need? So they're basically tricking you into giving them money versus giving you a resource that you need. So if you think about that, how long can that possibly last? Likewise with Windows, just a terrible operating system. Now it's spying on you, collecting all all your data and then sending it to OpenAI so they can index it. Likewise, U.S. companies are risk adverse with R&D. They're focused on vertical integration. For example, what does Microsoft do? Are they building new things? No, they're just buying companies or doing partnerships. So they partner with OpenAI, or they buy GitHub, or they try to buy TikTok. There are no foundational breakthroughs because they're a monopoly, and the CEOs are focused on, hey, I made $100 million. I made $200 million. Why do I care about doing any kind of innovation? So in a sense, all that the income inequality and the tax structure is creating a situation where it's very difficult for someone who's 18, 19, without getting money from venture capital to, in their garage, do the American dream and create some startup. So the opportunity for DeepSeek and other regions like the EU is that because the US is focused on shareholder returns, DeepSeek can pursue architectural leaps. So basically 1, 2, 3, 4 time increases because they're not also shackled by really terrible legacy products, for example, Microsoft Teams or Google Search. And China also has a lack of dominant incumbents. And so we don't have to worry about this in the case of DeepSeek with innovation cannibalization, right? So a lot of times companies don't want to cannibalize their own profits. So the big contrast here is that the big tech structure of America, and you can easily research this yourself, just go to Open Secrets, look at who's giving money to the American government. It's big tech. They're protecting monopolies. And so it's now created an opportunity for DeepSeek, for example, to completely disrupt America. Now, if we look at long-term research versus income inequality, we can see that in the US, it's really focused on short-termism, right? You hear all these VCs get onto TV and say complete lies about how open source isn't used to build companies and how we need to, give their company money. But as well, the public markets want quarterly profits. And then the private capital flows to these low-risk VC kind of exploding exit, rent-seeking type services. And then also the talent is hoarded by big tech for monetization. So AI ethics team is actually focused on ads rather than AGI moonshots. So really, if we look at the opportunity for DeepSeek, for Europe, for other regions, India, South America, it's that it's a huge opening because they're not focused on creating this innovation culture. Instead, they're focused on giving money to the people who already have the money. And if you look at what China could do here, the state-backed patience for doing R&D or 16 years of accumulation, in the case of DeepSeek, this is a perfect opportunity to disrupt many things that are happening in the US. And also this target of societal efficiency over investor returns. This is actually the opposite focus in the United States. Unfortunately, if we look at a lot of the products being built by Bay Area VCs, their goal isn't to help society. Their goal is, in fact, to make money and society be damned, right? So in the case of Uber, there's a lie that Uber was going to decrease the traffic in cities like San Francisco, and also that it was going to give people jobs. But in fact, it increased the price of a basic good. It also increased the traffic because these cars are circling. So in fact, they're not focused on societal efficiency. They're only focused on investor returns. So after a while, how much can you destroy society before there are repercussions? Airbnb is another good example. Supposedly, we're helping people, monetize a room in their house, but all of a sudden now it's an illegal hotel, and now it's actually destroying cities like Lisbon, Barcelona, cities all over the world. And instead, they're not focused on societal efficiency. Also, OpenAI, if you look at some of the things that are happening with OpenAI, are you really helping people? I thought you're a nonprofit. Oh, but you're destroying artists. You want to take artists out and you want to steal all their work and not ask for consent. So eventually, the chickens will come home to roost. And I think that's what we're seeing with DeepSeek. And really, the contrast here is that U.S. inequality is prioritizing shareholder gains. But with DeepSeek, it's a mission-driven model that's aligning with China's strategic patience. Now, let's also look at specialization versus big tech diversification. So the weakness here with America is that the big tech diversification, cloud, hardware, apps, it dilutes the focus. If you look at these big tech companies, I mean, what are they not into, right? They have their fingers in every single thing. For example, Google AI is going to split between search and Gemini and quantum computing, etc. And then they focus on the moats, right? So they want to get locked up proprietary data, lock people into APIs. They want this vendor lock-in. But if you look at what's happening, is there is a lack of innovation as a result. And so with companies like DeepSeek or Hugging Face or other regional focuses, they can focus on pure efficiency, right? That they can just singularly focus on building the best solution that's 10 times, 100 times better, reducing the cost trainings instead of locking people into a monopoly. We also avoid app battles, let other people focus on that. For example, they don't have to focus on building the best app. It could happen organically. So these US giants are actually struggling and actually strangling really the innovation in the United States. Now, we also have this talent culture versus US income inequality. So this is really a leadership issue. If you look at the United States, that if you are focused on giving people misinformation, focused on also driving them to not care about critical thinking, and also letting just rampant income inequality in the United States. The income inequality is greater than even the income inequality in the monarchs of Europe in the 19th century. If we look at this, what's happening? Well, there's elite clustering. The top AI talent is going to gravitate to the big tech roles or Ivy League labs, and then startups, which in fact potentially could never be bootstrapped, are going to be under-resourced. The income inequality is going to limit access to STEM education and also shrink the talent pipeline. So, for example, in the United States, one of the only countries in the world that's a modern country that doesn't have universal health care, it doesn't have free education. What are the impacts of that? Well, the impact is that can people even afford to take a risk? If you take a risk and you fail, you're going to be out on the streets. If you have a successful career and you decide to create your own startup, how are you going to afford health insurance, right? So this structure of enslaving people or making them indentured servants with H-1Bs or locking them into healthcare, the chickens are coming home to roost here. And the opportunity is for other regions to cultivate meritocracy, also have low ego teams like young PhDs from fifth tier cities like the founder of DeepSeek mentions, and they're hungry. They want to prove themselves. But that's really the goal, is how do you let someone who's hungry prove themselves, and what can you do to incubate it? Also, this flat hierarchy and resource freedom. So people in DeepSeek don't have limits on compute access or collaboration. Look, I have a good idea. I'm going to wake up at 2 a.m. and I'm just going to grind on this for several days. So this is really the point, is that U.S. talent is siloed and transactional, and DeepSeek is doing a culture that fosters collaboration and purpose-driven innovation. So let's go ahead and wrap this up here. The U.S. model is built on regulatory capture, monopolistic practices at scale, bribes to Congress, and also financialization. And this has created a complacent innovation ecosystem. And DeepSeek will exploit these gaps because it has cost disruption, which is going to undercut this rent-seeking of Silicon Valley. We have architectural freedom because they can do their own designs and ignore these legacy designs, which is a huge advantage. They also have patient capital. They can prioritize these moonshots like AGI over quarterly metrics, and they can also build an ecosystem. So open source really, as the history has said, is going to be the successful solution. There's no evidence in computing that closed source solutions are superior or that they will win over time. Eventually they go bankrupt, like SGI or Solaris, etc., or proprietary Unix. These walled gardens never succeed. And also the talent democratization is hunger over pedigree. So instead of being an extremely wealthy family who is able to buy their way into Harvard, we've seen lots of examples of this. Anybody, right, can compete in this kind of an ecosystem. So what we're going to see is that there could be a global shift here, not because of China or Europe or America, and it's this kind of nationalistic structure. It's that the core structure of the United States has created an opportunity for other people to outcompete. And I think this is really what the issue is that this regulatory capture, this monopolistic thinking, this ability to bribe Congress and to capture all of the talent of the United States has created a huge opening. And in fact, it seems unlikely that America will be able to close that opening with the current style of leadership that exists in 2025.